Indra, so nice to meet you and so nice to have you on this Fireside Chat. It's called the Visionary Fireside Chat. And for many of you who actually know about Indra, I'm going to tell a little bit more about Indra. A business leader, a strategic professional, is widely considered to be one of the top CEOs in the world for what she did during her PepsiCo stint as such. And to many entrepreneurs, Indra, you're a role model in the country. And through this medium, we're going to reach out to them, and message from you would be very important at the end of the discussion. Indra is also a Padma Bhushan, 2007, a CNN IBN Global Indian of the Year Award, 2006, and the Bauer Award for Business Leadership, 2019, as such. So it's really a pleasure and honor for me to be here with you. Thank you so much for joining this.
Pleasure. It's interesting, Sudhir. I look at entrepreneurs, I'm in awe of them because they take an idea and they take all the risk, they raise the funding, they scale it up. And some of them fail,
Yes.
but many of them succeed
Many of them
too.
fail, yeah.
Many of them fail and many of them succeed too, and they do things that are disruptive. And so I look at them and say, God, I could never be an entrepreneur like them. I'm more taking a big company and transforming it. So I'm more in awe of those entrepreneurs, and I don't know why they're in awe of me, to be honest.
Well, I think it's very interesting because many entrepreneurs become large entrepreneurs or large scale companies. And once the risk goes away, product market fit, markets being addressed, India or globally, etc., risk capital coming in, over the next 5, 6, 7 years of the life of a journey, the risk of that goes away, then it actually becomes something similar to what you have done. So let me start my first question with that,
Sure.
because there's so much of learning for entrepreneurs who are scaling up massively. I mentioned to you earlier in the discussion that two of our companies, First Cry and Lenskart, are scaling to become almost $1 billion revenue companies in the next 12 to 18 months. And that is something which is a large company on a global basis. Your experience in PepsiCo was literally turning around PepsiCo to a different thesis altogether, which I believe at that point of time did not exist. Could you expand on that? What did you do to change PepsiCo to where it is today?
So I want to set the record straight. When I inherited PepsiCo in 2006, it was a company that was performing extraordinarily well, always delivered on its commitments, great earnings per share growth. And so PepsiCo was sort of a iconic consumer products company that everybody was looking up to. I actually say it's harder to take over a successful company and keep it successful. As they say, turning around the successful company is harder than turning around a troubled company. So I'm sitting here with a successful company. I can't sit there and say, hey, everything the previous guy did was wrong. Now I'm going to take a big charge and reset the company, because I was part of the previous management. So if I criticize anything, I'm criticizing myself. But I had to sit down and say, should I continue operating the company like it was operated? Or do I have to zag when we've been zigging? So the only way to decide the best way to move forward is to actually look ahead a decade and then work backwards. Because it takes time to transform companies. It takes time to come up with a new agenda if it's needed. So I literally did a future back exercise, looked at all the mega trends that were going to impact corporations and consumer companies, food and beverage and PepsiCo, sort of zoomed into PepsiCo and said...
And I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. This future back exercise, and I'm going to correlate to entrepreneurs who are growing their companies to a larger level. What exactly did you do there?
So I commissioned multiple teams within PepsiCo, people in marketing, supply chain, operations, R&D, strategy, different people. And I said, go look at the mega trends as you see it that are likely to impact PepsiCo downstream. So they all came up with their version of the mega trends. And then we coalesced as a group into 10 mega trends that are going to impact PepsiCo into the future. So we had some perspective of what we needed to do to reposition this company for success into the future.
And this took how long?
About 6 months.
6 months.
6 months of work.
Okay.
And interestingly, when we coalesced around the 10 megatrends, there was a lot of commonality between what the teams had come up with. But there were 3 trends that required more work and investment than the others.
Okay.
One of them was a focus on health and wellness by consumers. At a time when our portfolio was more fun for you oriented. It was a focus on extreme environmental sustainability. Again, required work on our part. And the third one was an interesting one. Employees those days, especially the millennials, wanted to go work for tech or for the financial sector, for consulting. We wanted them to come and work for us. We wanted the best and brightest to come to us. So we needed to change the environment in the company to be different than it was, so that it was more inclusive, more allowing of people to bring their whole self to work. So we needed to transform the company's environment top to bottom.
The culture of the company.
The culture of the company, our approach, our benefits packages, a lot of things had to be changed. And so these 3 out of the 10 required more work than the others, like a focus on security, because at that time cybersecurity was becoming a big issue. We knew we had to do that. Or another big issue was you should expect tremendous volatility in raw material prices.
Sure.
But that's something we knew how to handle, except we needed to fine-tune that skill. So these 3 were the 3 initiatives that I knew I needed to put money, focus, effort behind.
And the pivot of PepsiCo was on these 3 broadly.
The thing is, what we had to do is keep delivering great performance.
And pivot. Okay.
So this was sort of a foot on the brake and a foot on the accelerator,
Right.
Put it that way. Or as they say, walk and chew gum at the same time. All of those cliches apply to us.
I must tell you, entrepreneurs do that every day.
So that's why I said I'm in awe of them.
So
yes, yes.
But one question, during that time, which is not too far back, the impact of technology on every business was shooting up. And to that extent, was there in your vision, the 3 elements which you talked about and perhaps others, was there a vision of how to use technology for growing the business and impacting the business?
The good news, so I think some of the technology executives took a vacation in the first 4 or 5 years of my CEO-ship.
Okay.
Because the iPhone had just come into the marketplace, so it really wasn't a factor. Zoom didn't even exist.
Okay.
Teams, Chime, none of them existed. So, we were doing business the good old-fashioned way. I think technology burst into the workplace only 2012, 13. Till then, it was progressing at a slow pace. And none of the stuff on generative AI existed then.
Existed that time.
And people were talking about AI and machine learning, but it wasn't huge. The biggest technology aha for us was the emergence of e-commerce, the early days of e-commerce, and digital marketing was invading.
But e-commerce was really big in those subsequent years.
And so you should think of my tenure as CEO in 2 segments. 6 years where things are progressing along at a very slow clip from a technology perspective, and the next 6 years where it was beginning to pick up.
Okay.
So you have to think of it in 2 eras. So once we knew that we had to transform these 3 areas, the real question was, how do we tell our people we're going to keep delivering performance, but we're going to do it while transforming the portfolio, while working on environmental initiatives, while changing the culture of the company.
Right.
And that's what led to performance with purpose. The purpose part was human sustainability, transforming the portfolio, environmental sustainability, replenishing the environment, and talent sustainability, which was cherishing our people, which was all new to the company. We couldn't deliver performance without focusing on the 3 elements of purpose. We couldn't fund purpose without delivering performance. So it was a virtuous circle.
Right.
And we had to keep conveying to people that this is not fixing a broken company. This is creating a future-proofed company. And in a way, it's more exciting to create a future-proof company because people feel excited about the future.
Right.
And they're proud about where the company is going. And that was the challenge we had.
And during that time, was, for instance, the whole environment-related issue as one example, and moving into healthy wellness products, especially the environment side, was that unique to PepsiCo, or there were a lot of people moving into environment-friendly practices?
Somewhere.
Not. So you were the leader. You were
among
pioneering
the leaders. That. Among the leaders. I mean, why did we do that early? Because, I mean, look, every time your lived experiences reflect on your leadership. I grew up in Chennai. And in Chennai, in those days, or Madras, we didn't have water. There would be months of the year where the city didn't have water for basic necessities.
Right.
And those who could afford to bring in tankers from faraway places got that. But the people who couldn't afford it would line up from the morning to just get 2 or 3 pots of water. While that was going on in the city, there are big companies on the outskirts of the city drawing water from the aquifers.
Right.
And they would have high pressure pumps and would drag the water out of the aquifers. To me, I thought that was a problem. Beverage plants in the outskirts of the city were using 2.4 liters of water to make a liter of beverage. And I thought that was not okay. And Chennai was just a microcosm. If you looked around the world, in any water distressed area, and there were many, many water distressed areas, and getting increasingly more, I thought we couldn't operate in those places and ask for a license to operate with this sort of a water footprint.
So this is very interesting. How did you reduce the water consumption?
So, when you have a lot of water and you really don't pay for it because you just take it out of the aquifer, you don't think about water use. But once you put a lens on it and say, or a light on it and say, I want to reduce the usage to 1.5 all the way to 1.2 over time, all of a sudden people start to look and see where is the water wastage.
Right.
Okay. If you're selling bottles, do we have to go through a 3 rinse procedure? Could you do, UV based or some other based water cleaning? How about if you took the wastewater and send it through a recycling system and clean it up to fish pond quality? So it's not as if you're using contaminated water. You're cleaning it to fish pond quality and then bringing it back into the system, because those technologies existed. So it just required hiring the right people with a different mindset and saying, you're going to get paid on reducing the water usage. Okay? Go and get it done. Because there were 2 issues. If you reduce the water usage, you're going to do right by those communities, and then you get a license to operate.
Right.
If you don't, you get shut down.
Yes.
If you do it, your costs go down because you don't have to pay for water then. But if you don't do it, you're in a different place. So my point was simple. Don't just tell people, because we're just good people, we should do it. Link it back to the business benefits,
the economics,
financial, the economics. And all of a sudden people go, we have to do it.
Amazing. Now, this would have required enormous culture change. Did you hire many people with the right mindset? And how did you transform the existing people to the right mindset? I'm sure there would have been enormous resistance to change.
I think for those people who grew up in, water plentiful areas, to them this notion of water distress is alien.
Is alien.
Or when you talk about plastics, it's like, what's wrong with plastics? Well, we're running out of landfills. What do you mean we're running out of landfills? So all of these were alien concepts. So for all of those people, there was a lot of education that had to be done, showing them, Al Gore's film on The Inconvenient Truth had come out at that time. So that helped me get that message to people. But I would say overall in PepsiCo, people were energized and enthused about being part of this journey in terms of what they knew and what they could do. But when it came to new capabilities, we had to hire new people.
You had to hire new people.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, teams of research scientists, teams of flavor scientists, people who knew how to think about plastics in a different way. We had to hire all of those capabilities. And for a while, it was difficult integrating them into the company. Yeah. But I think over time, they earned their stripes. People looked at them and said, God, we should have brought them in 5 years ago.
So that brings me to a very interesting question, which entrepreneurs do face all the time. Pivot and change, innovation, agility, right? And especially pivot and change. Pivot and change can be very scary.
Yeah.
If somebody has been in the system for a long time.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is pivot and change can also be extremely invigorating and motivating for people to do different things and stay back and change.
Provided the leader goes out there like a missionary,
okay,
and tells the story again and again and again.
So the whole concept of communicating again and again is huge.
Huge. But you've got to communicate in a simple way that touches people's heart. Don't just put a slide presentation and say, let's just do it. Don't talk about, globally we need to reduce water. Tell them, let's talk about your backyard. Let's talk about a city in your country.
Something they can relate to.
Exactly. And I think when you make something so personal, linked to their frame of reference, and talk about the benefits that are going to accrue, not just to the world at large, but to their community, to their country, to their city, whatever it is, all of a sudden their heart gets involved. Very often we speak to people's head and hands. We do not speak to the heart. And anything that does not involve the heart is not long lasting.
You were hiring new people.
Mm.
What were you looking for in those new people during that phase of pivot and the next phase of the life of the company?
First of all, they had to have the core skill that I needed.
Right.
We were not going to hire somebody that I liked or I could feel a chemistry if I didn't feel they were subject matter experts. So we had to find the subject matter experts, but then find a way to bring them to the company. That was a challenge because a lot of subject matter experts wanted to talk to us because they were intrigued by the company, by me, so they'd show up for the interview. But then after a while, they'll say, why would I leave my job and come to PepsiCo? The best one was I hired a chief scientific officer, Mahmood Khan, who was perhaps my best hire in PepsiCo. Mahmood was an endocrinologist, grew up in England, practiced at Mayo Clinic, and he was head of science for Takeda Pharmaceuticals. So he had a multi-billion-dollar budget. He talked to me a few times in PepsiCo, and then he said, Indra, how can I leave a multi-billion-dollar budget and come to work at PepsiCo? It makes no sense. And I loved Mahmood, his style, the way he understood our industry, and I wanted him at PepsiCo. I needed him in PepsiCo. So I told Mahmood, look, in Takeda Pharmaceuticals, you cannot taste all the pharmaceuticals you make. But in PepsiCo, every product you tinker with, you can taste.
You can taste, yeah.
And you will make change across the world on such a large footprint that you'll actually feel fulfilled by what you do.
And that was motivating.
He went back and thought about it and said, the fact that I could influence so much of the world and address core diets and core habits was invigorating for me. And the fact that I had a leader who believed in it said that, this is something I should embark on. So Mahmood joined us.
Key hiring, leader must get involved.
Absolutely. Oh, all the key hires, I have to be involved.
And what entrepreneurs face all the time is entrepreneurs are running new companies which have never existed before.
Right.
We have invested in 140 companies. Trust me, none of those companies existed before in their category. So it's a new business model, new revenue model, new product, new technology, new go-to-markets, and new people.
Yeah.
Right? So the risk is and new capital. Now, when you hire, they hire from conventional industry.
Yeah.
Most hires are, in age terms, older than the entrepreneur. The average age of the entrepreneur in India is 27 years old right now, right? And he's going out or she's going out in a year, 2 years' time to hire people from maybe PepsiCo.
Yeah.
And the demand is for higher salaries. How do you address that situation?
Well, the fact that they're hiring older, seasoned people makes a lot of sense because, you can think of a startup company in the 0 to 25 million or whatever the equivalent is in Indian rupees. Those are early days. If you can cross that hurdle, you've gotten somewhere.
Yes.
But that becomes your first stall point. And after that, as you think of the next few stall points, and as you're scaling up, you have to build the frame for the company. You've got to put in the systems, the processes. The quality.
Exactly as any other company.
Exactly. And it doesn't matter if you grow just to 100 million or grow to 10 billion. Because once you grow to 100 million and you haven't put those in, you're going to go back to 20 million.
Yes.
So you have to put that lattice in. The only people who know how to do it are people who've done it in large companies. So you have to bring them in. Now, here's the problem. People you're going to bring in, if it's not retirees, you're bringing in people who are making a lot of money in a less risky environment. Now you're bringing them to a risky environment and saying, do it. So it's got to be people who are motivated not just by making more money, but by disrupting an industry or meeting an unmet need.
A different cause.
The purpose has to be articulated. And then you give them ownership in the company and say, look, together we both can change the world. But it's hard to get them because many people in that level in companies are so established. They're very good at what they do. They're so established. Life becomes a little easier after you've slogged for a long time. Now you want me to go back and slog with very little resources and not a fancy office? Not sure I want to do it.
There is no fancy offices, entrepreneurs.
That's right. So we have to think about a different value propositions for them. One of the things I've often thought about when Indian entrepreneurs come to see me, should we create a cell of seasoned professionals who can be the central knowledge repository to help all the entrepreneurs create these lattice structures?
Yes.
Because I'm sure you have it already, but having these seasoned people could go a long way.
So somebody's asking me, what's the biggest value add which a VC provides? And I keep telling them it's networks. So you bring like-minded people and just talk to the entrepreneur. That one hour discussion with a group of entrepreneurs. John Chambers did that with us, by the way. He met 22 SaaS entrepreneurs in India for one day. Trust me, it was amazing. Because
But let me take it a step further, because I look at the food industry.
Yes.
For any entrepreneur who wants to start a food, beverage, anything consumable, there's a very strong Food Safety Act,
yes,
which requires you to put in place certain disciplines. Every entrepreneur cannot afford to put it in. So if I were a VC or a bunch of VCs investing in the space, I would set up a central food safety laboratory and system that all entrepreneurs can go
tap
to.
into.
Exactly. If you don't do that, so if you talk about SaaS, this is laboratory as a service.
Yes.
LAS, we want to call it that. Let's make up a new name.
Oh, interesting.
Okay, you have to do that. Otherwise, what's going to happen is these startup guys are going to be having claims and labels that are not going to sustain,
Right.
Any valuation when they get flipped to a strategic.
Yeah.
And so we have to think about how to support these entrepreneurs.
And India doesn't have these kind of services right now.
That's what we need to do. Unless you do that, these guys will have a tough time flipping the entity.
And in fact, we have a company called Cure Foods with 160 kitchens right now, growing massively.
Was it a commissary of sorts?
It's a e-commerce company on food, supplying 100,000 packets a day right now. And in my view, India's investment opportunity, what Nandan calls it, and I've copied it, population scale investment opportunity.
Sure.
There are a billion people who need insurance. There are a billion people who need excellent food.
Yeah.
There are a billion people who need lending.
But if you have not put in place
a
food
food
safety system,
I think food is becoming a very big thing in India right now, overall. So this is interesting. So there's so many learnings which entrepreneurs can have from the bigger world, and especially what you mentioned across global geographies. Because what may have happened in terms of food safety, as an example, outside the country may be far advanced. However, there's a cost to it. So the question is when to invest in that.
Well, you have to pass off things that are scale related to a central entity. Because it's going to take a while for you to get to scale. But you have to behave like you have the scale, even when you're small. And that's why I say any VC that's investing thematically should think about how to somehow accumulate that scale. You can talk about the Food Safety Modernization Act in the US as being only Western world, but the FSSAI in India is pretty vigilant.
It's pretty vigilant, yeah.
And I think that it's very important, if any product gets exported to the US, you have to meet the FSMA requirements here. So build it earlier on. I'll give you the best example. So a long time ago, we bought a product called Sobi from an entrepreneur in the US. And when we bought the product and our scientists started to look at the labels and what's in the product, we discovered that we could not operate it the way the entrepreneur operated it. This was a long time ago, before Mahmood came on the scene. When he came, everything changed. For example, there was a product called Sobi Lean, which was a low-calorie product, and the label was liquid liposuction.
Okay.
Very, very catchy name. And people bought it because it said liquid liposuction. Now, once PepsiCo bought it, the lawyer said there's no way you can say liquid liposuction, but there's nothing liposuction-y about it. An entrepreneur can say all these cute things. Big companies can't.
Cannot.
And this was being flipped to us when the revenue was still very small. So what I say is, any entrepreneur should think hard. Today, big companies are more savvy. They know how to buy. They're not buying fad products. So make sure there's, a sort of alignment between the label and the ingredients and the claims. Because if you don't, then you're not selling a real product. You're selling a bit of a fake product.
Right. Switching back to today, you have so many assignments which you're in, and I'm intrigued about your being on the board of Amazon, which is very different from what you were doing earlier in some sense, at least the business models. That's number one. And number two, you're also on the board of ICC. And that's cricket, which I believe is your passion. So let's talk about the boring subject, which is Amazon first, and then cricket.
Cricket. Amazon is a fascinating subject.
Yeah.
I view Amazon as perhaps one of the most consequential company of our times. And I don't believe we could have survived COVID without Amazon. In the United States, there is no way that seniors in particular would have survived without Amazon. And I think that Amazon is just a spectacular company. And I feel privileged to have a front row seat to everything that could be changed in the world to make it more easy for consumers or citizens to live day to day. That's the way Amazon thinks about its business model. And so I actually look at Amazon as the most fascinating assignment I've ever had. Cricket is a passion. I mean, I love bat and ball sports, but I grew up with cricket in India. Religion and cricket were the same for most people in India. And when I came to the US, I fell in love with the New York Yankees, not baseball, just the Yankees, who I still love with passion today. But between cricket and and the Yankees, my love for sports continues, and the ICC is an extension of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's the message which you will give to Indian entrepreneurs who are scaling companies within the country with passion? Frugality. The India of today is about Chandrayaan 2 landing on the moon. On the south side, the first time, that's inspired so many entrepreneurs in that one day. It's about Aditya, which is the probe to the sun. And it's about the next manned mission from India in 2025. It's about 400 helicopters made in Indian design. India has launched 431 satellites for 34 countries so far. It's becoming more technology. And the next picture, which I see of India always, is not the Taj Mahal, it's of technology. What message would you give to those entrepreneurs who are motivated by a different phenomena today?
Well, let me just speak a little bit about India today. India is not just the most populous country in the world, but I think within India rests so many little Indias, each one with its own needs, its challenges, its issues, its opportunities. India needs the entrepreneurial ecosystem more than any other country because each of these subgroups have deep issues that need to be addressed. Let me give you an example. We talked about satellites, we talked about Chandrayaan, we talked about the probe to the moon, to the sun. I think that's all fantastic. I watched the Chandrayaan launch and I too was proud. So it's fantastic. At the same time, India also has the most number of kids who are not
malnutrition.
Who are not able to read and write the way they should.
Education.
We have an education system that has to be completely revamped. We have a higher education system where the top of the pyramid is great, but then you've got a large portion that requires reinvention. So the wonderful thing for entrepreneurs is that there are enough opportunities in the country that they can go off and address if they put their mind to it.
Which have deep impact on society and business.
Deep purpose and will change the face of the country. So while I'm just in awe of all the entrepreneurs and I think every one of their ideas is just so brilliant and I don't even know where they get it, I think all the entrepreneurs are working on the fundamental issues of India to build a stronger base, a stronger foundation, and equip Indians to have a shot at a better life.
Yes.
Is what makes me optimistic about the Indian entrepreneurial system in India. Because if the entrepreneurs don't address it, government cannot address all these issues. Now, the best example I'll give you is my husband and I were driving through Karnataka. We stopped by a village where the kids were just playing outside in the morning. When we drove by in the afternoon, they were still playing outside. So we stopped and we talked to them and said, when do you go to school? They pointed out to a room there and said, that's our school. These were kids from age 5 to about 8. And we said, why have you been playing the whole day? Oh, our teacher never showed up. Teacher never showed up. How often does this happen? Happens all the time, the oldest kid says. So we just play the whole day because our parents are working in the fields. Right. I look at that and go, some entrepreneur is going to have to address this. Because if it's one room and it's one teacher, there's no accountability. And that generation of kids is going to go through a patchy education system, unable to enter any schooling system.
Right.
But if that group is not educated, India's lost the services of that talent pool for the future.
And which is massive.
Huge. And so I say every part of India, there's an opportunity like this, begging to be addressed by an entrepreneur. So I'm excited about the opportunities available. I hope as many entrepreneurs want to put satellites on the moon and do all that stuff, which I laud and I say that do it. I hope there are equal number of entrepreneurs who want to go and change the fundamental issues in society that the population needs. So India actually grows an equitable society.
I must say that I'll give you some examples. That's happening in our own portfolio. The agri-tech companies are through satellite imagery. I think it's the combination of high tech to deliver what the society needs. So there are 3.5 million farmers who are being serviced by satellite imagery through a company called Cropin, and for soil management, disease management, crop productivity, and so on and so forth.
Yep.
So that's a combination again.
Right.
We've delivered $28 billion of insurance and lending to consumers, right? That is through technology, faceless lending on technology and faceless collections. And the health, we have delivered to 25 million people. Myopia correction, we've delivered fitness, we've delivered. So I think what's emerging, what we see as investors, is entrepreneurs solving very real challenges. And I go back to Gary Hamler and C.K. Prahlad, the bottom of the pyramid. And that is huge in what we are now calling, by just copying Nandan, population scale, which can be achieved because that's the number of people. And what's also helped is the digital public infrastructure. UPI today is used by 350 million people. And that means there's a payment mechanism. In 5 years from now, 750 million people will use UPI, which means that in nooks and corners of the country, services in small sachets can be paid for.
Absolutely. And I think these are the innovations coming out of India that are dazzling. However, when we talk about population scale, when we talk about bottom of the pyramid, that bottom has got men and women.
Yes.
And I think that women entrepreneurs, making sure you address women's issues should also be front and center. I just don't see the funding going to women entrepreneurs. I still think Silicon Valley ignores women entrepreneurs, and I'm not sure India has done a lot for women entrepreneurs either.
I would say Indian women entrepreneurs by number is about 14 to 20%, that range of all entrepreneurs.
But don't give them microfinance loans. We're talking about real entrepreneurs. In terms of funding, I have to tell you, you're still in the single digits.
Sure.
And India's got extraordinarily brilliant women, who understand the issues. And there's so many issues related to women and families that need to be addressed. But they can address any issue. They're brilliant. I think I would encourage you to think hard about what is it that's holding us back from believing in and investing in women entrepreneurs. I saw some of the numbers. Even public sector banks don't give much credit to women. Why is it that Grameen Bank has a 97% repayment rate from women, microfinance recipients? But outside of microfinance, they don't seem to be heard by everybody else. Deliver, be heard. They don't even get the financing. So I think the time has come for us to say population scale requires us to think about men and women. Population is not just men. So that's a plea that I have.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said. Indra, thank you so much. Your message is well received, and your accomplishments are already there in the Indian ecosystem and the world ecosystem. I look forward to your coming to India, and trust me, whenever you come to India, give us another couple of hours and we'll put you in front of young entrepreneurs. The youngest entrepreneurs I've met is 19 years old. And the average age of the entrepreneurs is around 23 to 30 years old. And those are the entrepreneurs who are now having what we call audacious entrepreneurs who want to change the world.
Look forward to it. Make sure there are lots of women in
Lots of women in this, yes. That's a condition.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank
you so much.
Sudhir. Thank you so much.
Thank
It's a pleasure. Thank you.